So yes, I'm a clinical social worker, and I graduated, I guess, in like 2003 with my master's, and ended up working a little bit in psychiatric research at the medical university, and then getting a job doing individual therapy and group therapy at the Charleston VA. And so I worked in the PTSD clinic there. I guess it was for 7 years. So anxiety and depression and PTSD and military sexual assault. And so I got trained in the more cognitive behavioral therapies, and then also in trauma focused therapy treatments. And it was pretty, the training and kind of the type of therapy that we did, it was pretty by the book. Like it was structured clinical therapy. Like it was pretty, like you get trained in like the handbook or the modality, and then you were really supposed to follow it. So, but before that, I had worked doing experiential education. So I guess adventure therapy. I'd worked doing some climbing walls and ropes courses, and running, well, mostly working with kids and kind of using the experiential education or like adventure therapy piece to help kids learn, and help kids and adults, kind of learn about their emotions and their behavioral responses and kind of process it, but like in a fun way. So I had done that stuff and I really liked it. And so I guess in 2015, I left my position and was going to stay at home with my kids, theoretically. And then I got a phone call from a friend who's a psychologist, and she knew that there were 2 veterans that were starting a surf program, and I did not surf. So they were just looking for a social worker who could come and do like counseling sessions at Folly Beach. And I had done some private practice, and I had done a lot of just kind of like walking sessions. Like we would meet outside, I'd meet clients outside, or meet at the beach. So I had done some of that stuff. So it seemed like a good fit. And so I would really just initially just would come and just kind of do traditional like do the same kind of therapy, do trauma therapy, but we would be sitting on the beach. And so, and then kind of as we kind of developed the program, we decided it made, in our minds, it made more sense to try to really integrate the surfing and the time in the water with the therapy piece. And we kind of shifted to doing more kind of positive psychology. So just really working with people on, and it was veterans, but working with veterans on identifying what were their strengths, what had enabled them to survive, multiple deployments, or what had, helped them to keep themselves safe. And, so what was working and what wasn't working, but in the context of identifying their strengths and really focusing on that and kind of building on that. And so that's when I was introduced to surf therapy. So at some point, I think the founders, they had started the program because they had come back from multiple deployments. So one was a Marine and one was a Army medic. And they had done traditional counseling and they'd done psychiatric meds, and they had found that the surfing seemed to be the most therapeutic for them. We learned over time that people were more, I think having, I worked at, and this is not to criticize traditional counseling, because I definitely think like there is certainly a place for that. And I typically, when I describe either the kids outdoor groups that I'm helping with now, or when I describe not like the therapeutic surf programs, I usually say like they're a nice complement to individual therapy, and really, and I'll kind of talk about that. But even with the nonprofit, the women's program, I always make sure that people feel like a pretty thorough intake. And so that if they're in a place where, where it seems like they might really benefit from individual counseling, I make sure that they know kind of where they can get that, and that they can do the surf therapy on top of that, or equine therapy, or boxing, any of those things. So yeah, I don't think it's a replacement necessarily. For some people it might be, but I think it's a nice complement too. So I'll kind of just jump into some of the slides, and then I'll just move around a little bit. So we know, traditional counseling, typically with mental health, people come in. For me, I was, in an office setting, and we do a lot of, it's talk therapy. With doing some of these outdoor sessions, either with kids or with the surfing, I think what I like about it is that we'll talk about some of the changes people might want to be making, and then we're actually able to practice it. So, somebody might describe, oh, I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety. Well, if we're introducing something like a new skill, like learning to surf, then they're probably going to experience, we're going to kind of be with them, as they're experiencing some of that anxiety or discomfort or some of that uncertainty. And then we get to kind of see, we see, and the participant sees, the client sees, or kind of observes, or learns to observe, like, oh, this is how, when I do this, then I feel this emotion. Here's how I respond, and how does that work for me? And so I feel like that's the important piece. So we really try to, I typically say, like, we use the experiential education model, which is really giving someone an experience. And so it could be surfing, it could be horseback riding, it could be, rock climbing. Somebody's doing, Beth Mattenauer, a clinician's doing boxing, somebody else is doing jujitsu. I mean, there's like such a wide range, it could be any of those activities. And we're kind of pushing them a little bit outside of their comfort zone, which is what we would talk about a lot in working with anxiety disorders or trauma. We would say, we know, you're describing, dealing with anxiety or experiencing anxiety, and we want you to be able to face that. And we would talk about those concepts. And what I liked about some of these alternative treatments is that we actually get to be with the person as they're experiencing those emotions, and they are kind of exposing themselves. And then we can kind of guide them in discussions afterwards and kind of process as a group, like what came up for you, and what was that like? And oh, you felt uncomfortable, you felt uncertain. How did you manage that? Psychotherapy, I think, wonderful, and lots of different modalities that we can use. One of the things I really liked, let me skip through this, is this idea of adventure-based counseling. So, you might call it adventure therapy, surf therapy, adventure-based counseling, any of those, wilderness therapy, any of those things. It's really just taking, adventure sports, or like an outdoor pursuit that involves like physical activity, typically physical activities, often in an outdoor environment. So we know that being outdoors and being around nature and being around the ocean has its own kind of therapeutic elements. And then we work with clients on kind of putting them in situations where they are going to be challenged and where they are going to experience different emotions, and then really just paying attention to like how that plays out, how they respond as they want to try out.
How do you manage if someone already has like self-esteem issues, for example, and then maybe they have some perfectionism along with that, where they're trying stuff and they want to do really well and they're not doing well?
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage like frustration and things like that?
And we get, I feel like we have a lot of that. So I'll do an intake before, I'll do an intake beforehand. And so I'm just going to talk about Waves for Women for a second. So when we work with the nonprofit, we do small group sessions that are like 2.5 hours. And usually there's about 10 women, and we meet, we do kind of an intro wellness discussion, and maybe, we might describe a skill, and then we'll surf, and then afterwards we'll kind of debrief and process. So a lot of the women will come in though, and they'll have these certain ideas about their expectations for themselves, like how they're going to do when they get out there, or like if they perceive themselves, even if they have a lot of confidence and they perceive that they're going to do really well, and then they get out and they're not doing as they anticipated. So I find that it's really nice because we have these amazing, all of our instructors are females. So I lucked out because I was not a surfer before this, and I'm still like learning. I always like clarify, like I'm a wellness person and I surf, but my partner is a surf. She surfed since she was 6. She's like very integrated into the surf community, like the women's surf community at Valley Beach. So she gets these like amazing women to come out and volunteer their time teaching. And so they're, and what I like about that is, so everyone's kind of together. So when we do like a pre-surf, like wellness discussion, and then when we get in the water, and then when we process afterwards, like the clinicians or like the wellness coaches were part of it, the participants are part of it, and then the surf instructors are part of it. And so we're all kind of on this like even, I guess, playing field. And a lot of times the surf, the participant, if somebody is describing, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated, you know, we'll get a lot of moms that might be like, you know, I have 3 kids and I have, you know, all these things on their plate, and they're surprised, you know, or frustrated, or that they're not killing it out there in the water, you know. So people will kind of share their own experiences with that, with frustration, and with like their performance not meeting expectations.
Mhm.
And it's amazing because really, like, almost all the women, you know, will have an experience like that. And then, you know, we'll try to talk about, Kristen, my partner's really good at like breaking down for people, that for us, we'll say, this is not really about you like getting up on the board and like, you know, doing this amazing like pop up onto the board and then riding this wave in all the way to the beach. And it's, we say, you know, it's more about kind of that process that you go through as you're doing it. And we work on like, what are your expectations for yourself? Where do you see that in the rest of your life? You know, how does this serve you when you have these expectations? What can we do to maybe modify that a little bit and kind of break it down a little bit? And maybe we want to kind of shift our expectations a little bit, and really just, it's so, I kind of laugh because I say, oh, it's so easy for me because like the other women do it, like they give feedback. Everybody gives, you know, feedback to each other or shares their own experience with surfing. But I think it goes across the board. So we talk about like, why do we think this works? And it's, you know, we think that, so we're taking people, we're placing them, so we say like a little bit outside their comfort zone, but not out of like their safety zone. So we know we want, everyone needs to be safe. So that's why we do the intake, and we're, you know, people need to have basic swim skills. And we have like almost the same number of volunteers as we do women, you know, so it's like a 1 to 2 at the most ratio of surf instructors to participants. And then often once you get like the clinicians in, and then we'll have like water support. So we'll usually have like, if we have 10 women doing the clinic, we usually have like 8 women volunteering. So I think that safety piece is important. So we want them to feel safe and feel supported, and that's important. But then on top of it, we want to challenge them as well. And then we want them, you know, to be able to kind of, you know, have take some risks, but like healthy risks. And then, you know, work with people, because we get a lot of women who come and you know, it's helping them actually experience a sense of accomplishment. And if they're not experiencing that, kind of talking about, again, back to the perfectionism and what are their expectations. Let me see on here. And we feel a lot, so on mindfulness, surfing, well, typically what we'll say is when you get into the water, and when I worked with Warrior Surf Foundation, which is military, people would say, you know, you get into the water, there's a lot of variables that you have to be able to pay attention to. So you're noticing like, okay, I see the waves, so much that you have to pay attention to. So it's really kind of like a natural consequence. It's like, if you're not mindful when you're in the water, if you're not present to what's happening around you, very likely, like, you know, you may hit yourself with we use foam boards. So use foam, like not hard tops. But you could, you know, knock yourself with the board. You could, you know, run into somebody. You could, there's, you know, all these different, so there really is kind of this negative, like almost like I don't know, immediate, but there can be negative consequences or uncomfortable consequences, I guess, if you're not present. So we talk a lot about that, and really like, how does that play out in our lives? Like, how are we able to be present? Let me go down a little bit. So this was,
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just thinking, so do you think that is also helpful? I don't remember the diagnosis that was on there for people maybe with ADHD, where, you know, they have trouble focusing, or worse.
No, I think it's honestly, my daughter, my 9-year-old has an ADHD diagnosis, and we've put her in surf lessons for like 3 years. Because I think that the water, and I'm not an expert in ADHD, but I think that like the water can be soothing. I mean, there can be days when you're out there and it's rough and it's choppy and there's a lot happening, and there's a lot to pay attention to. But then there's also like definitely periods where you're out there, and I do think it has kind of this ability to soothe, just like being in the ocean, being part of the natural environment. So, and I think because working with the military, so we did have a number of people who had traumatic brain injury, who would come out, and were able to. And so with both Waves for Women and with Warrior Surf Foundation, we're part of this larger organization called the International Surf Therapy Organization. So that's based in El Segundo, California. But I think right now there's like 55 plus organizations from around the world that we're all members of this like umbrella organization. And we work with different populations. So some work with kids that are on the spectrum, some work with veterans or adults with disabilities, physical disabilities, like just kind of across the board. And like all the way from Australia, I do these phone calls with this program in Australia, which is really just amazing, called Fluoro Friday. And so we do those phone calls, like they're in Australia, New Zealand, and then there's several programs in South Africa, and then, you know, in the States, Peru, like it's just kind of everywhere. But what's cool about that is being part of the organization, we agree to share like our data. So like what we're collecting, and that's actually a requirement that you have to collect data so that we can examine efficacy of the intervention. And then we share our curriculum so that we can kind of learn from how everyone's doing it. There's actually one of the guys that's part of it. He's getting the first in the United Kingdom. You can create your own like doctoral track, as long as you have like professors that will like sit on your, I guess, dissertation board. So he's getting the first like PhD in surf therapy, which is really interesting because there's like a whole like kind of research academic piece of the organization where people like just talk about data. And so, yeah, so I think the part I put on here, I just thought this was important with, I think, any activities like this, you know, and with the kids groups we're doing. So you can do, you know, I can go meet my friend and go paddle, do like a, you know, stand up paddle boarding, or I can go to the climbing wall, you know, at the James Allen County Park, and I could pay and do the climbing wall. And so I think those are good. Those could be positive experiences. I think what's different about the adventure therapy or experiential education is that what we're focusing on is that, you know, we want people to have the experience. We want to make sure that we promote like that there's a safety component to it as well. And then afterwards, we really want to debrief. So we do like this processing afterwards. And I think that's a really important piece, because that's when people get the chance to kind of like, you know, think about and talk about like, oh, what did that feel like? What happened out there? And then kind of notice, oh my gosh, where else in my life might this be showing up? I get really frustrated with myself when I'm on the board and I can't catch the wave, and I start saying all these horrible things to myself, and I'm, you know, and then it just gets worse and it snowballs. And then we'll talk about like, where else does that happen? Oh yeah, it happens when I'm at work, and it happens when I'm out with my girlfriends, and it happens, you know, so we'll start to talk about that. And I think then having that kind of noticing where else in your life it shows up, and really just kind of reflecting on that, and then talking about, okay, what do we want to try next time? When we hear ourselves, you know, in the water, and I'm saying, oh, you know, you suck, or I'm so bad, or this is horrible, or everyone's watching me, you know, whatever those thoughts are, like, what can we do? Can we catch it? And then what might we, you know, what might we replace that with? So it's like we're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, you know, or reframing, and we're just kind of saying, you know, how else might you talk? And then we'll ask the group, like, how do you, you know, how do these other women here, how do you guys handle that? And what I love is that women will have this wide range of experiences. So we'll get women that have been experiencing, you know, have experienced sexual assault, domestic violence, really horrific, you know, divorces, who've had substance abuse issues or postpartum issues. And so just like a really wide range. And with COVID, it's like almost anyone is, you know, reporting some sense of like social isolation or anxiety or uncertainty. And so, but there really is like, there's so much common ground where kind of regardless of where the person's coming from and kind of what their backstory is. And I don't really ask anyone to disclose it, you know, during the group. That's kind of, they can choose what they want to share and not share. But there's just, I think that's a big piece of it. There's a lot of people not feeling so alone because they're hearing from other women that they've experienced something similar. And and that's kind of where the community and connection comes in. And I think that's why this past year was just our second season, but we had so much interest. And I think it was, okay, well, it's outside. It feels, it's COVID. I'm socially isolated, but I feel maybe a little bit safer if it's outside. We could do 6 feet apart on the beach. We could do the masks when we were having our group. And then if we surfed, we didn't have those, the masks on. But so I think people were just looking for connection. Really, really, really looking for that. And yeah, that was a photo. I meant to do more photos. We've kind of lucked out because there's so many amazing, we've had just incredible volunteers. So a couple of friends have come out, or photographer friends have come out and done like photos for us. And I talked about a lot of these things. I noticed that when women, and then we'll talk about the kids, but when women fill out their intake forms, I think we've had, I should know the number by now. We've probably had 65 women maybe go through. And when they fill out their intake forms, almost everyone I ask at one of the last questions is, what do you want to get out of coming here? Like, what are you looking to get out of coming here? One, to catch if somebody says like psychiatric medication, like I want to know what their expectations are, so I can refer or give them additional supports so that they know that. And then but most people say the chance to connect with other women. And so that's so we're not surfing right now because we're doing a little bit, but not tons. And so we're just working on, like, we're going to have a group, like a kayak this Saturday, and then we'll do like a bar class and a yoga class, and but like have the instructors come to us. Okay. Do you want me to see if there's any questions about that, and then I can jump into the kids?
So Erin, you said you do like the bar class and the yoga class. Do those occur on the beach as well, or is that another location?
We haven't done the bar yet, but for yoga, we've had some of the women that have come through the program, or that just, friends. We've had volunteers come and they'll do the yoga at the beach. So we've done some, now that it's getting colder and it's harder to do the surfing if people don't have wetsuits, and it's hard for us to like buy enough wetsuits to fit every body shape. So the yoga we've done on the beach, and we'll do like the meditation piece on the beach. We've done something with Nature's Adventures, which is in Shem Creek. So there's like amazing organizations that are willing to let us, we did a free kayaking last year. The bar class, we've had a couple women volunteer in some outdoor settings that are bar instructors, just to teach a class, and we would have like, our women, or just women in general, come and do that. So I try to find out what other programs or organizations, are working with, or either doing something physically active, or kind of have like a therapeutic piece, or just an outdoor environment, outdoor adventure, whatever, outfitter. And then we just try to connect and collaborate so we can, give. I think part of the reason that we do that is, like, I know that the people come out, and not everybody, I don't think, is gonna like love surfing and want to like buy a surfboard and like get a wetsuit, we have some women come out who actually have like a pretty significant fear of the water, or have like a fair amount of discomfort, and they just want to challenge themselves, but they don't want to like stay with it. So what we're really working on doing is, when we know of other programs, trying to figure out like, well, okay, well, let's give our women the chance, or any woman a chance, try the surfing, like see how that feels, like let's send you to Kim, who does equine, or let's send you to Beth Mattenauer, who does think boxing, who does the boxing, or there's another, Zoe is doing jujitsu with women who've been traumatized. We kind of talked to transformation yoga, so really making sure we can connect, just so people kind of have a range of resources.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So how do women find you?
So we have a Facebook page and we have a website. I think initially a lot of it's word of mouth. I mean, I try to, and I finally gotten help this year by like some of our surf instructors that are not 43 and understand like Instagram and all those things. So we're like doing better with like all the social media. But I will get on a lot of like, I think I met Tony from the Department of Mental Health Task Force. Like I'll get on the DMH. So because I'm not part of MUSC or the VA, I try to get on some of those like phone calls. And so we try to network just so we can
say you need a Colleen, but she's ours. You can't have her.
Is she the PR person? No, is she the connecting person?
She's the non-43 person.
Oh no, we have one. We do. We have Amy. She's from South Africa, and she's like 30. And I feel like I've adopted her whole family because her dad's now my chiropractor, and her mom is doing event planning for us. And her sister did some videography. So, but they do. She knows like very basic things like Instagram. What do I do with this? Yeah.
It's helpful.
But I think it's been a lot of word of mouth. Or it's been a lot of people sharing with their friends.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. You mean to talk about the kids groups for a minute?
Yes, please.
Okay. So
wait just a minute. This is Kelly.
Yeah.
So do you work any with the MUSC trauma services that the National Victims Program that is at MUSC? Do they know about you?
They do. They should. I've met with them. I've met with them probably only twice, a couple times. I had worked at MUSC and I had worked under psychiatry, so I knew some of those clinicians. I've met with several of their psychologists, and then I try to update them. I definitely refer people to them like quite frequently,
right?
Just because like we don't do case management, we don't do med management, we don't do. I will do. There's a few of us that can do individual counseling, but it's like if somebody's really needing, I refer to them a lot.
Yeah, they do. It seems like that you could work very hand in hand with a lot of their clients as an add-on, and they could refer to you too.
I probably, now that you're saying that, it's like I probably should reach back out because it was probably a year and a half ago that I initially met, and then I would meet with a couple other people that were involved with them. But that's a great idea. I
know a lot of people who've been through trauma, and they work with veterans too, not just women with sexual crimes and other things. It's a whole spectrum, and they have kids groups, and it just seems like that this would be a great add-on for them because they are only limited to the clinical setting. But this seems to be something that would integrate people into the community who are fearful too of being in groups. This would be like a safe group too.
That's what it sounds like, Kelly. I agree.
I will reach back out because I have like one or two contact people, and I'm thinking now that because I think when I first met with them, it was more like I had worked at Warrior Surf, but we were starting this new nonprofit, and I would imagine they might have had some hesitancy about oh, am I really going to refer to these guys? But now we've at least have data, and we can say 3 years Warrior Surf and then 2 years of this, and we can kind of show and the safety measures that are a part of it. But no, I think that's a great idea, and I know even working with. When I was with Warrior Surf, a lot of the a large percentage had a PTSD diagnosis, and a large percentage would say that coming to that first meetup was one of the hardest things because it's we're at the beach, there's sand, there's flashbacks, and it's a group of people that you don't know, and there's a lot of but thank you, because I should reach back out because it's been a while.
I know a lot of people who receive services there, and this seems like it would be very helpful for them because like I said, it's a safe therapeutic module, just like equine therapy is too, I think. But this seems to be, because we live here in Charleston, that this would be something very soothing, and then they can take the skill set that they're learning from you and maybe do some of that on their own too, with mindfulness at the beach. That that could be there for them when their therapist couldn't be there or you couldn't be there.
And we try, last year, the last 2 years, our clinics, we would do a clinic and we would have people would have 4 sessions, so 4 Saturdays in a row, which I clearly don't think is enough, but the other piece of it that we are trying to build is that, so now we have a Facebook page and that anyone can get on, but then we have a closed Facebook page for the participants. And what I even see now, which I I think, which I'm hoping will continue, is that then, you know, somebody will post on there like, hey, you know, one of the ladies posted last week, like, it's my, you know, 48th birthday, like, who can someone meet me at the beach? Like, and maybe we'll bring a board and maybe we won't, or, you know, and so it's facilitating that like continued interaction or like relationships between the women, that doesn't require us to be there. I mean, you know, like they can, so I really want to facilitate that community. And that's kind of where like the other classes like bar or yoga or any of that is just trying to provide additional opportunities for the women to stay connected.
So it sounds like you allow them to become families and to support one another.
That's a huge focus, and that's a huge goal, is just, you know, creating safe spaces and creating community for the women that can like continue once they're, you know, if they're not doing, you know, a Saturday clinic with us. And I feel like that's like a I'm constantly trying to like brainstorm with that or figure that out, or, you know, work on like what's the best way to keep people connected, or to facilitate connection between, you know, the women so that they can stay connected should they choose. Yeah. But that is a goal.
Excellent.
Thank you. I can talk about the kids groups if you want. Is that good?
Sure. Yes, please.
So we had a lot of interest, I guess this past summer. We were getting a lot of emails asking if we were doing kids groups, and my partner, Kristen, she's wonderful because I tend to like automatically be like, yeah, we are, like, we can do that. And she will say things like, well, our insurance doesn't cover people under 16, or, you know, like important pieces like that. But we were getting a lot of questions, and we have Surfers Healing, you know, but that's like a weekend a year that, you know, people, for kids who are on the spectrum and other disabilities, that they come out and their families will come out and watch and they'll surf. And so we really weren't in a position to start therapeutic surf programs for kids here. Now there is another organization called Youth to Ocean, and they do some really amazing programs with kids from more disadvantaged backgrounds, and they'll do marine science and kayaking and some surfing. And I think with COVID, they weren't able to do very much at all. But so what I did, myself and another clinician, we started just, it's not like the most creative name in the world. So we just called it Kids Outdoor Wellness. And I didn't want to start another website or anything else. So and I have my private practice, you know, license, or, you know, I have insurance for that. So two of us, there was like three of us, I guess, just decided we would offer kids outdoor wellness groups and really just focus on teaching kids social emotional learning through, you know, fun activities outside. And that's really, that's really, you know, so like having an hour-long group, and again, kind of more the experiential ed. It wasn't surfing, you know, it's not, you know, there's not that adventure therapy component necessarily, but we just started offering, just groups that would last for an hour, and we would meet at like Sunrise Park or Waterfront Park in, what I always call it, Mount Pleasant Riverfront Park. I always call it the wrong name. We would, meet there, and really, I mean, we kind of a similar, I have like a little ball, and we would sit in a circle, we throw the ball around, and like when you grab it, it's called a debrief ball. So when you catch it, like your finger's on a question and you ask the question, people answer, and then we would like play, there's a bingo game where it's identifying your strengths, and you can, you know, you mark that off, and then we'd like set up cones on like two different sides of the playground, and we would ask a question about, when you get upset, you like to talk to a friend, you run to one side, or I like to, you know, write in my journal. You know, we would just do, that was a big reason for doing it. I'm still doing that. I have a Facebook page. It's just called Kids Outdoor Wellness Groups, and we try to post when we're going to offer groups. But I guess the bigger part of that is that we were fortunate to connect with City of Charleston Parks and Rec. So there's Eduardo Curry runs several of the downtown, and I think maybe one of the James Island community centers and parks. So like St. Julian Divine downtown, East Bay, and then Martin Luther King Park by the MLK pool, and then a couple other locations. We had connected via a woman who went through the Waves for Women program. So she was a professor at CFC and she knew Eduardo. So we connected, and he was really, really interested in, he said, I love the recreation piece that we do with the city of Charleston. He said, I wish, he's getting his master's in clinical counseling. And so he was wanting to add a therapeutic element to it. And he was also trying to address the fact that so many families, especially families from lower income areas, were struggling with kids that were at home doing remote learning and parents that had to work, or kids that couldn't get into the after school programs because Kaleidoscope is limited based on numbers and didn't necessarily have childcare, and then wanting to use the available City of Charleston recreation facilities to create programs for those kids. So we're just really starting out like super small, right? And I say we, it's Eduardo is making it happen. We thankfully got Charleston Good on board to kind of help if we could find funding and all those things. But right now he's got a partnership with Sanders Clyde. So the kids from Sanders Clyde that aren't able to get into the Kaleidoscope program, and I think that are also doing remote learning, can come to the St. Julian Divine Center, like from 3 to 5, like 5 days a week. And then we'll rotate in. So I'll come one day. A couple of us clinicians from Waves for Women will come and just do like a 30 or 40-minute kids group. And we'll sit outside and we'll make it fun, and we'll try to get kids talking and, you know, kind of get them connected, and hopefully give them some skills, like, you know, do some mindfulness exercises that are, you know, kind of silly, or do some belly breathing, or, you know, so we can make it playful and make it fun. And right now, yeah, so hopefully, I know Eduardo is very focused on wanting to grow it. Like, so he's, I'll talk to him one day and we're talking about St. Julian Divine Center, and then he'll slip in, you know, oh, and the MLK playground, and then he'll slip in, oh, the James Island, you know. So I think just trying to figure out, like, that's a pretty significant need that our community has. And I'd like to think that if enough of the organizations could work together, you know, we could find a way to, I guess, create programs that can serve these kids and all the kids. I was trying to think. I know this.
Erin, you said you work with Eduardo Curry, and he's with the city?
It's City of Charleston Parks and Rec. So yeah, just the City of Charleston Recreation Department. He oversees like some of the parks facilities. And so we run some of the rec programs, or helps out with some of the rec programs. But he was, you know, the St. Julian Divine Center, it's like this amazing community center that they just redid. And it's on East Bay, right next to, like across from the bridge, but pretty close to, it's right next to Sanders Clyde, which is downtown elementary public school. And there's
the city also has a program called Charleston Youth and Families, and it's with the city, and they have access. I think they may work with him because they have access to all of the community centers. And I know the executive director, they do a festival every year, and they work with
the backpack buddies, or do they do that one?
Excuse me, it's not backpacks, where the school supply drive.
Okay.
Yes. It's the first day festival.
The first day, that's okay. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to think of. Okay. And is it called Charleston Youth and Families? I'm sure Eduardo knows.
It's Charleston Youth and Families, yes.
Okay.
The mayor's office for children, youth, and families.
Okay, so he does report. I know he was, because I think I asked probably a really naive question, like, well, can we just write some grants? And then Eduardo was like, Erin, I have to go to the grant writer and request, and then he's like, I have to get, and then he did mention the mayor's office. Okay, so he said, you know, I have to get approval, you know, I can't just,
because they do work with a lot of the communities downtown and a lot of the at-risk population.
Okay, well, you know, and it was interesting just to kind of, even just to meet Eduardo and talk to him about what he wanted, you know, what he was doing, or, you know, wanted to make happen. I guess it's an important point you bring up, because we had Todd and Jakara, who are with Charleston Good, that is, that organization kind of helps nonprofits and other organizations collaborate. And,
Mhm.
and it was this idea of like, we don't need to replicate something if it's already there.
Yeah.
We don't need to duplicate it, if it's already happening, but like, how can we contribute to what's there? I'm just thinking that as you're saying, because I'm wondering, like, are there already existing programs, and we should, but it's really, we're trying to kind of address the need and then bring people in. Then I was calling Youth to Ocean,
Sure.
trying to get them to come do some stuff too.
Well, I'm listening to what you're saying about the different populations, and I think about some of the children that live here in Charleston, have born and raised here. They've never been to the beach.
Yeah.
And your program is so amazing, and it would, in addition to so many other things, it would just give kids the opportunity to see things and experience things. And a lot of our children, they do have trauma. They do have things they're going through, and so I think you have a great program.
Thank you. Well, and I hear what you're saying, and I would really like for us to do some like youth programs. I think that was like probably when I first started talking to Eduardo, I was like, and then we'll take him surfing. And then, he had said, okay, so let's start with, maybe we'll start with some basic swim skills, or
Yes.
Let's start in the community. And then he had said, maybe we use MLK. Can we get some foam surfboards? Can we just like practice some pop-ups? Like, let's start there. Let's see. Yeah. So I think it, and there's actually, now that you say that, some of the program in South Africa, they are working primarily, or when they started, it was really, and there's some amazing programs, like really even in the States, that are one called the City Surf Project, I think in San Francisco. And they're taking kids who, and some of these kids some live by the ocean, like you're saying, and haven't been there. And some don't, live an hour or two away and
exactly
haven't been able to get access. Yeah. And so I think it's such a powerful, when we went out to, believe it or not, there's something called the International Surf Therapy Conference. So we went to like the past 2 years, I think. And in the last day last year, well, pre-COVID that year, they had a day where we all could volunteer together from these different programs, and they brought kids in. There was some adolescents from I think a foster care program, or maybe possibly a group home. It was outside of LA. And then there were kids with pretty significant disabilities, where they would have adaptive equipment and like actually have like a pro or semi-pro surfer like on the board with them, and then people on both sides. But it was really incredible. Like for me, like the kids, like that was the most exciting part, because we had adolescents there, and like typically, it's hard to impress an adolescent sometimes. So like, but it was amazing to just kind of, to get in the water and get to see that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really was incredible. So I'm hoping we can move in that direction, and incorporate kids as well. And I think the last part of that is just, I think I saw this. I feel like there's only so much the schools can do right now. I know that at least my kids are in public school, so I know that there's, social emotional learning, so, incorporated into the curriculum as best they can. But I think that a big, focus, or I guess concern of mine is like, or question is like, how can we be it Waves for Women, or, another organization, or even just clinicians or the community, like how can we help support giving kids access to learning these skills if we know that it's a pretty chaotic time right now. And they may not be able to get all those access to all of that within the school system, or at least kind of limited. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's most of it. Does that?
So Erin, I'm curious, your program is it free? What's the fees? How much does it cost?
Yeah. So it's $100 for this surf therapy program. So it's $100 for 4 weeks. We go back and forth on like, so we're a nonprofit. So it's like trying to capture. So what we do is this. We basically say, we can provide partial or full scholarships as needed. So, I do ask people to provide, some sort of like income verification. But I don't want to ever turn anyone away. at the same time, what we're still working on this year, like kind of in this winter time, is figuring out, okay, that's for the people that, you know, we need to make it accessible to all individuals, especially when we're talking about like connecting with Thrive. We want to work with domestic violence, or connecting with like the task force on human trafficking. It's like, clearly we have to make this accessible financially to everybody. But then we're also trying to figure out the other piece. If people show up and they are in a position to pay, we have to find a way to kind of bring in money that way to offset the cost of those that are not in a position to pay.
And then
Right
that's what you need. That's what you need Kelly for.
That I know. Okay. Yes, I do.
I'm thinking, like, if we refer people, Melinda, that we wouldn't advertise it, but if people come to us for help and we think this will be beneficial to them, that maybe we could do some sponsorships for consumers to help, you know, a sister nonprofit here.
But you know who else, Kelly? This sounds like something Mental Health Heroes would work
yeah,
well
I
with.
agree. I agree too. And that, I mean, that would be, yeah, you're right. That's a good referral source too,
Okay.
for definitely a lot of the population that we're talking about reaching, with a lower income and people who don't have access to care, just
Yeah.
typical care. This
Have
much
you ever heard
attention
of them,
to a
Erin?
child, you know, would be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of Mental Health Heroes. Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if it's through the DMH task force. If I would have heard it with some of those.
It's
Probably,
actually through
yes.
DMH. They're at the task force. Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's where, yeah, so maybe, well, yeah, I mean, I would definitely reach out to them. I mean, I think our focus, and, you know, it's funny because my partner will constantly not remind me, but at the beginning, she didn't want to charge anything. And so what I noticed is, though, well, when I worked at the VA and a certain percentage did not have to pay for services, the no-show rate would get pretty high. And what was tricky, like, you know, there was like, because there would be nothing. It wasn't even like, you know, so I think for us, it got a little tricky because we're 100% volunteer. Like the founders haven't gotten paid yet. But then and then the volunteers don't get paid, you know, at this point. And so my concern was like, oh my gosh, well then I want to add the kids program. And then at some point, like the volunteers might start saying, like, you know, it's a lot of time. So yeah, that's the other piece, is figuring out partnerships and collaborations. And then, you know, and honestly, some of it for us might just be, I mean, we're doing grant writing. We, thank God, have someone volunteering now who's like development, and somebody else is doing, you know, event stuff. And I've written like many grants, but, and we are working for this early summer. One of the women that went through our program is a yoga instructor. And we had talked, I had gone through a training through Transformation Yoga, the In Agreement training. And, you know, surfing is not a very diverse sport, as one might imagine. And we had talked about what we could do to address that as well. And we were working, Ashley Mazzell is the yoga instructor. And I think she's one of the limited number of African-American female yoga practitioners that are in the Charleston area. So we talked about, you know, we're working on doing a like surf and yoga for women of color like program in the spring. There's some really cool organizations. There's one called Black Girls Surf, founded by Rhonda Harper, and she's like in Senegal actually, but she's also in California. She runs a program in California. And there's actually one called Brown Girls Surf too. We don't have chapters here, but I have reached out to like Outdoor Afro and a couple organizations just to say like, what as an organization can we do to make it more comfortable and like facilitate. We provide the equipment, we provide like the wetsuits, but once they finish, you know, like they don't walk away with a free surfboard. Like that's the other piece. Not yet, at least.
Okay. And it's so $100 for 4 Saturday sessions. So basically $25 a session. I think that's excellent. Excellent
And that's
price.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how we, I mean, that's, so we're not, we're not running right now we're just doing more like wellness meetups, and those basically are free unless someone wants to make a donation. But once, like, I guess April hits, we'll be moving a lot, we'll be doing it again. Now, if anyone is interested, we do still have women reaching out. So that's my job right now, is like, we're not doing the surf clinics because we don't have enough wetsuits. And honestly, it's like hurricane season, it's rough conditions. Like, it's not ideal for somebody to learn right now.
Understandably.
Yeah, but people still will join the Facebook page. And then my job right now is really just like facilitating, if women are reaching out who have not been a part of the program and do not know how to surf, that's kind of where the other stuff comes in. Okay, let's just do a wellness meetup. Okay, we'll do a mindfulness one. Oh, we'll do a yoga. If people can pay, they can make a donation. If they can't pay, then they don't. And then creating those relationships with like Nature's Adventures. Like, okay, do you guys want to give us a free kayak expedition? Those things.
Okay.
So that's my goal for the winter, is like, we just need to help women stay connected and then find affordable ways for us to, to continue to meet up and have like these spaces where we can focus on wellness and work on wellness and build community, and just continue doing that throughout the winter until, then we'll get back in the water.
And what about the kids' wellness groups? Like, how much is that? And what was the age range again?
Well, so if it's, when myself and a couple of other clinicians, when we're doing the kids outdoor wellness groups, I will say anyone between 6 and 16, but then we break it up based on, like, we would do like 6 through 10, and then maybe do like 11, maybe even 6 through 11. And then we've mostly had people reach out that I've only done groups so far with like ages 6 through 12. And I'll still have another clinician. Somehow, thankfully, I've had like OT students, and I usually speak at the MUSC at one of their OT classes. We've had OT students, and we've had a couple of clinicians that are like, working the supervision, be willing to come out and just kind of help and assist. So those groups though, and it's not a set time right now. So, I mean, I just, people join the Facebook group, and then I'll kind of, based on what people's availability is, then we'll schedule a group. Yeah, so that's still kind of in the works. It's the same kind of thing. I say $20, but then I say, but if you can't afford to pay, then we'll just do a scholarship, which just means they just don't pay. Yeah. So, and then with the city of Charleston, like, they sign up for and honestly, I'm not sure about the after school program. They were doing a homeschooling program, and I think the city of Charleston was charging like $40, and that was for like, I don't know, 6 weeks, like 2 days a week. And it was $40. Wow. I think that was the cost. So hopefully we'll get these programs, like, we'll be able to keep providing it, maybe get some more consistency to that. And then I can give Tony, I can give you the contact info.
Okay.
And what kind of volunteers are you looking for? Are they like people that are already masters in social work and they're already licensed, or
no, if it's so typically for the women's groups, for Waves for Women, if somebody is, as long as we have one licensed clinician there, and we always do, and same for the kids groups, then if I have somebody reach out and they're just like, they're interested in wellness and they want to just co-facilitate a group, or like, kind of be there to just kind of, ask some of the questions, or like just have another body there, just again, with the Waves for Women, it's easier, it's adults. So I will say with the kids groups, I really haven't had anybody that wasn't like, occupational therapy or like counseling, even at least an undergrad. But for the Waves for Women, we'll use, because women can come and be water support, and that just means like you cheer for everybody when they're surfing. You're just paying attention, like watching everybody in the water. And then if somebody really likes the wellness piece, then they can, kind of help facilitate the conversation, as long as we have at least one licensed clinician. And then the surf instructors do all have surf instruction experience. Mm-hmm. So, and then 2 of us are lifeguard certified. So, in CPR first aid. Yeah.
We're great cheerers.
Yes.
Good. we always need cheerers. They're kind of like the favorite people. Like, I mean, everyone likes them the most. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. Before I let Erin go, does anyone have any final questions or anything?
Erin, Tony has all of your information, correct?
She does, and I'm gonna just forward her the Facebook stuff, like our website info, and then because I've got it on my slide, I don't think you want all my slides because I always do too many, but I can at least send you the contact info slide. I can forward that to Tony just so she's got everything on there.
Because I saw your flyer, but it looked like it was just for children.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh, maybe.
the one that yeah.
I do have, yes. So yeah, in the Waves for Women, thankfully we have a woman now who went through our program. You notice that I ask everyone who goes through the program, like, do you want to or like, if someone ever mentions they want to volunteer after going through the program, I'm super excited. But we have somebody who has her own marketing firm, so she's redid our whole website.
That's the NAMI credo. Yeah.
Like asking for volunteers.
Once they go through a program. Yep.
Yeah. And I say, you're giving back to the community. It feels really good. Like that's part of like wellness. But yeah, I've learned to ask everyone. So yes, I'll forward the contact.
And I did want to let you know you are in our resource guide now too. We big, huge resource guide with all these local organizations, and you've been added to that under.
I use a lot of the NAMI stuff. We had to like collaborate and create like the surf therapy manual. So I was adding like NAMI page, blah, blah, blah. And here's your crisis intervention, because it's so concise, I think, and like understandable and digestible. So I use it a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely family friendly. And when we're writing stuff, we try to write on a 5th to 7th grade level, because in South Carolina, that is the average literacy for our state. So, sometimes I get people who complain about that and say, well, why is it so simple? But it's so it can be accessible to more people. It's not dumbed down anything. We try not to use acronyms, and we try to talk like real people talk. Just this morning, me and Tony were on a call with the Department of Mental Health, and they started throwing acronyms out. And I've been doing this a long time. So they were like, do you know what CC blah, 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 blah? And I was like, well, what does that stand for? Because I probably know what it means. And so when they said what it was, I did know what it meant, but we all have our own little language in our little silos. And it's real important that we don't use that, because that excludes people instead of including people. So thanks for.
And it's funny, but I feel like I use very similar materials like with the kids than I do with the adults, because honestly, the kids stuff is fun. And
right.
And this is not man bashing, but when I worked with like the military, mostly men, I felt like I only had their attention for so long. They really didn't necessarily want to hear like the like feelings talk. And so I would
use like CIT training.
Yeah. So I like the kid stuff. I mean, it makes sense. People understand it. It gets to the point, and it's usually fun.
And it's fun. Yeah.
I think too, when people are in crisis mode, that having things as simple as possible is just helpful. You don't want to try to like go through and get a dictionary out or trying to like process complicated information. Keep it simple. So I think that's great.
I agree.
Well, I've got to get off of here, Erin, but I just want to say thank you for your program.
Thank you
for what you're doing. And I will definitely share it with more people. I had heard about it through one of our volunteers knew about your program. And so she had talked to me about it, but not this in depth. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And a lot of us who are on this call talk to a lot of people in our community. So we will be sharing your information. I definitely will. So I appreciate your time, and I hate to run, but I've got to take care of my family too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Yeah, and it is 8 o'clock. And I know you've got to take care of your kids too. So thank you.
My husband will not put them to bed. They'll just be awake for hours. So
All right, thank you so much, Erin. We appreciate you.
okay, thank you. Take
Erin,
care.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.